Okay, we're rolling. This is pretty exciting. I'm happy to have you on the podcast. This is Heidi Newfield. It's nice to have you here and sitting in a lovely studio there in Nashville. Nice to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Darren. It's great to be with you. Yes, it looks like we've both got the cool studio situation going. This really is our home studio, and we kind of in 2020 we've turned it a little bit more into a live streaming studio and a little less into a music making studio, but we still make music in here.
Yeah, it's different now, isn't it? It's you've had to rethink about what you have and how you use it. But what the great thing is if you have the stuff, or if you have a situation like you do there's lots of other options to make things happen.
There are, and again, just kind of making lemonade out of lemons here. We've used this opportunity to learn. It's been a huge learning curve for, I think, a lot of us on all fronts, but particularly as artists, trying to stay connected to our audience. And so doing a lot of live streams and podcasts like this and these types of things has taught us a lot about lighting, a lot about photography. And so we've turned what was more of a hobby with, a nice camera that I had. And now my fiance and I have learned a lot about, and continue to learn that I think that we're going to, it's something that we might take into the years to come, as a way to continue to stay even closer to your audience. Why not? It's another more intimate way than just social media.
Yeah. And it's fun. I mean, it's funny how many people, like I'll come online with a lot of people and all of a sudden you look and the background's terrible or the lighting's terrible and you think being artsy people,
that they would care.
Yeah. Or see it but they don't half the time. And it's like, I'm always surprised how bad some situations look. And
there's some bad ones out there. The worst part is when not only they look bad, but when I hear somebody that is such a stellar picker or singer artist, and they're just, their phone is way off and the sound quality is not there, and I'm thinking, wow, it wouldn't really take a whole lot to fix that, but I guess people are doing the best they can with what they've got, and we're lucky that we have the home studio to work out of. And so we've literally capitalized on what we had, watched a lot of, Matt particularly, I'm not going to take credit for as much as he's learned a lot, but just, watching a lot of tutorials and all kinds of things about, like I said, lighting and how to make your camera, work at its full capacity. And it's been an interesting, so we're, like I said, trying to make the best of it. But I think if there's anything that's come out of this year, as far as from my standpoint, is, boy, do I miss people. I miss, that exchange of energy and live music. And so, I mean, I never took it for granted before, but now, I'm going to be happy to be everywhere.
Yeah, even on TV now, I was watching last night something, and there was some type of live event, and people were going up and hugging one another and stuff. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, oh no, this was taped like 3 years ago. And just seeing that interaction makes you nervous.
Almost makes you nervous, isn't that?
And it's so bizarre. And that's only after it's been like 6 months of this, and then we've really conditioned ourselves to be different people than we were.
It really truly has shifted our behaviors, and and in turn how we deal with it in our minds. And you're right, it is your first reaction now when you see people, and we try to kind of, we're never, I never get political or any of that thing. I learned from the best, from Elvis and Dolly and people like that, to go, no, we why would I talk about that? But I keep that platform to myself, and keep it music and life and the human condition. But but it is really something that has saddened me to see something that, when you here, we take it seriously, and we have chosen to take it seriously, and we wear our masks out, and when we're in public and or going into any public place, and we've been very careful around here, and that's just our choice to do so. So when you see some folks not doing it, or like you said, you see something from before and you're going,
Yeah.
it does make you kind of nervous.
Yeah, it's funny. Back when this all started to happen, I remember going into Costco, and that's right when it first kind of happened. It's like, oh, we gotta need to get some stuff, and I was in with my sister. We both go in. We had the masks on and stuff, and we were the outsiders. Everyone was looking at you and strange.
Like you're out of your mind.
Yeah, and it's still like nobody really knew what this whole thing was all about, how you got it, how it was transmitted, all that stuff. But now you go in, and if you see
and it's
someone
the other way around.
Yeah, if you see someone who doesn't have one, it's really odd. And that's a good place. I mean, I'm glad
that's good.
We're there.
That's good. I mean, now that we know what we know about it, because gosh, I think it was around, what was it, March or so, that we all started to kind of, I think they knew more in January or so than the public were let in on. But I know that I started having conversations about gigs, and I had an album coming out this year, and which I know we'll talk about, but all these types of things, and so many things planned. And it was this year was just going to be a blast. I mean, of activity and shows and so many things going on, and 1 by 5 by 10 they just started to disappear. And I had to stop and rethink the release date, and I pushed that back from June, and even wondered if I should put it out this year at all, and then decided that I would kind of stick to my word. I had been doing a lot of live streams, and I had been talking to my audience about putting a record out, and I decided that pandemic or no pandemic, that the world still needs new music. And even though it was going to be a very odd record release for me and my team, that it was important to stick to my word and to go ahead and come with it. So we put it out on August 28th. But very, very different climate out there than your normal album release type situation. So
it is a good thing that the music is still rolling. I mean, glad we're not in the movie industry. I mean,
right?
You keep seeing all these movies that keep getting postponed, and it's supposed to be this one out. Now it gets postponed again. And I could see them not wanting to release something because it should be in the theater. And that's going to pretty soon get to the point where they're going to have to get some form of money back from some of these movies. And I heard that today, even that they're going to start releasing a few more. But at least in the music industry.
That's why you're seeing a lot of, I don't know if you're a big, Netflix or TV series, cable series type thing, but you're seeing more, I know it feels like I'm seeing a lot more multi, like 8 to 12 series seasons and those types of shows more than ever before. And they're coming out with some really good ones. And I do a lot of writing for sync and TV, and more so now than ever before, because there's more to write for. And plus it's a really fun place to put your mind that's different than writing for your own album or for another artist. And so you get to go into the deep, dark depths, or you really get to explore thinking musically, cinematically, if that makes sense, is always a lot of fun. So that's what I've been spending some of my time doing as well. And less movies and more series, it seems like.
Yeah. And I like that. I watched Hannah on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, so that was on Prime. And I couldn't stop watching. That's the thing that's bad, because the next,
then you're done for.
Yeah.
Then it's a marathon, and it's 5 in the morning and the sun's coming up and you're going, my day's ruined now. What have I done?
Yeah.
But you just can't stop. So I guess that's a sign that it's good, but that's gotten me a time or two as well.
Yeah. Well, let's go back and find out a bit more from your past and how you got to where you are now. Obviously, a lot of people know you from your solo career and with lead singer with Trick Pony as well. Both those careers really loved and always loved your voice. And like you got this great edgy voice that I really like.
You.
And I was doing a bit of looking online and just refreshing myself on some stuff, watch some live events online from you. And it's like, yeah, you really put it all in when you hit the stage. And I didn't realize how great of a harmonica player you are.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I love harmonica. It's it's an instrument that I really have kind of almost become a sort of one of the many ambassadors for the instrument for harmonicas, because it's just so easy to carry around. I don't have to schlep a drum kit or a bunch, maybe a small amp or something like that, depending on what I'm going through, but what I'm playing through. But it's just a wonderful addition to just about any kind of music. It's so completely, you can throw it in from jazz to rock to obviously blues and country. And I mean, there's just no limits to what I can do with it. And it's been a fun instrument to continue to get to be a student of. I mean, I learn more about it every day.
Yeah, the ratio of great players to really crappy players is quite skewed. There's very few really great harmonica players and a lot of just terrible players.
Not so good. Yeah.
No, that's one thing I hate when I see a singer-songwriter type person throw it.
Play bad harp.
Yeah, it just brings everything down. And it's it's kind of it can be a quick and easy thing to get noise out of, if that's
yes,
good way to put it.
And bad noise at that. I mean, really, really bad noise. I can attest from having first started. Thank goodness I picked it up as a kid, and so I would say that the majority of my worst years sounding like a cat's tail getting run over or something, just something horrid and hideous coming from my room was as a kid. Thank God I had patient parents. But moving to Nashville just out of high school, and then bringing obviously harmonica into the mix with me in a big way. I really feel like I got my education when I first started touring and with it. And so there's some things I'll look back on from time to time, or I'll hear, or even early records, even the early Trick Pony records where I didn't play as much. I didn't have as much confidence in myself. And so I would kind of, like our first single, Poor Me, doesn't have a harmonic. There's no harp on it. Yeah. And yet we never ever played it live without a big rambling harp solo. And it makes me sad that it's not that what went down on tape didn't end up having harmonica on it. But that's just a part of the growth. And I'm I'd rather, like you said, it'd be quality and it'd be good than me showing my growing pains on record. So it's been a really great instrument. And you're right, there's some pretty sucky harmonica players out there too. But
I'm trying to think of
somewhere.
There's a guy that I have in the back of my brain, harmonica player, and I can't remember he played with George Jones or one of those guys. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Probably Charlie McCoy or Jelly Roll Johnson.
That could be it.
Jelly Roll played with with George. Jimmy Hall, not so much. He plays more blues rock like Jeff Beck and Bonamassa and stuff. Mickey Raphael would be more Willie, but he
that's who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Mickey?
Yeah.
Yes. He's very much a stylist.
Yes.
Good friend.
Curly hair.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
He's got a very distinct look.
Yeah.
Big guy, big tall guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's who I had in the back of my brain. He's
Mickey's one of those guys. Well, if you think about it, Mickey's one of those guys that had to, he joined Willie Nelson and the Family Band back in 1973, and he's one of those guys that doesn't look his age at all, and he takes good care of himself, and he's a really interesting guy. And if you spent the majority of your career playing with Willie Nelson and ultimately becoming a really integral part of Willie's sound, like when I think of Willie's sound, I think of as much of Mickey's harp tone as I do of that gut string guitar, So, but imagine having to play it with Willie's timing.
I know.
Every single night, that many nights, and all those events and so forth. So he really had to learn to be this unique stylist, this total stylist, and his phrasing. There's nobody that phrases like Mickey because he's had the greatest education of all.
The last time I saw Willie, it was the strangest thing because the time would go from straight to shuffle to straight to a shuffle.
Yeah.
Back and
or
forth.
on the floor.
And the same song. All of a sudden I'm thinking, are we in the shuffle now? We're in a shuffle. And all of a sudden it'll go back to straight again. And it's wow, that was the strangest.
And sometimes it'll go to a waltz. And then sometimes, you really never know what. I've seen Willie's, Paul back there he was a magician, and Willie is a magician. I mean, he's actually just completely brilliant. He's either way ahead, but he's still, he constantly is reeling you in. He's either way ahead, or he's way behind. Very rarely directly on it, and somehow it ends up being just totally uniquely Willie Nelson and full of soul.
Yeah, and it's so unique that I've always heard guys pretending to play like Willie. They'll do a thing where they try to play behind, but there's nobody can actually imitate it. I've never heard one person who came close to actually imitating his phrasing and his style. No. It's kind of halfway there.
The only ones that I know personally that can do it well are his two sons, Micah and particularly Lucas.
Oh wow.
They've got it down, but no, he. I think that's why really why I've always been a fan of, and I don't know about you, Darren, but I know that I like from my youth, I was just madly in love with music from just a child on and drawn to it, and I grew up in kind of a rural area in Northern California, so we had horses and cattle, and don't take that for having money. We were ranchers, but I'd say horse rich and cash poor. But it was a wonderful way to grow up, and so lots and lots of in my youth, it was a house full of traditional country music, and that's what my parents listened to, and that's what I came up on. But of course, as a young girl, I had two older sisters, and they brought the Stones and AC/DC and great rock bands of the 60s, 70s, and so on into our house, much to my mother's chagrin. But we had bluegrass, we had a little gospel, we had kind of a lot of different things. And then, interestingly enough, I was about 13, and I started finding the blues on my own because of my interest in the harp. And
how did that interest start, right? How did you go from a young age? Did the singing come first, or did the playing come first?
Probably more the singing came first. Like, I first jumped on stage completely unsolicited. My parents, no stage mom kind of situation. Nobody asked anybody. I just walked up at about 6 years old at a big outdoor event there was about 250 people there.
Yeah.
And there was a band playing that was way out in the hills in Northern California. And there's a band playing on this big flatbed truck on a generator, of course, because they're way out in the boondocks, and it's beautiful. But and everybody's dancing, and there's this big dinner and so forth. And my parents were sort of towards the back. I think they were towards the bar area. And I just walked up the stairs and tugged on the lead guitar player's on a break. I was being respectful, or in between songs, and tugged on his shirt and said, "Hey, mister, can I sing a song or two with you tonight?" And he was kind of, taken aback, and he looked down at me and he said, "Well, yeah, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Delta Dawn, key of C." And that was the first song I walked out and sang in front of an audience. And I don't know really what drove, I don't know what drove me to do that. I just decided that that's what I was going to do. And I walked up and did that. And that was it. Like from that night forward, when I got that applause and realized, okay, I think this is what I want to do. I put the blinders on, and I pretty much stayed music was it for me. So I was always in love with music, and different kinds of music too. And that's why I was grateful for growing up on the quality of country music that I got to grow up on.
Yeah.
So I grew up with a great and a deep appreciation for the art of country music at its best, and from the instrumentation to the artist. And so that leads me to, so singing came first, and then I started playing piano, and then I went from piano to guitar, and I still play a little piano, and I definitely play guitar.
Yeah.
But my grandfather, Clarence Wright, played the harmonica. It's such an old cliche story, but he played the harmonica, and he played more straight heart, more of the old cowboy songs and kind of campfire songs and so forth. And I used to think that was the most lonesome sound that I'd ever heard. I thought, oh my gosh. So I
love
asked
old
my mom
cowboy music. Michael Martin Murphy and
Marty Robbins.
I
and
love Marty Robbins.
Who doesn't love Marty Robbins?
I got to see Marty Robbins live, which is, I still think,
Did you really? I never got to see him live.
So good. His outfits, he had the best outfits.
And that voice like silk.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I asked my mom to, if I could get a couple of harmonicas, and fortunately they were we didn't have a lot of money, but they were supportive as they could be. And so, I got piano lessons and I got guitar lessons, not together, but one after the other. Like after I had the mean piano teacher, the old mean piano teacher story, I said, can I stop playing piano and start playing guitar? And she made me a deal. And she said, I'll tell you what, you sit down and play, when you can sit down and play me a boogie woogie tune, straight through without messing anything up. And I mean, like flat out boogie woogie, like all that right hand, left hand coordination. She said, I'll let you pick up the guitar and you can hold off on the piano for a while. So I did just that, and I practiced my butt off, and I sat her down and played that boogie woogie tune. And actually now looking back, I wish she would have gone back on her word and said, now's the time for you to keep going.
Yeah.
But she stuck to her word, and she let me pick up a guitar, and I started taking acoustic lessons in our little hometown, and I'm grateful for that, because it's been, both piano and guitar have been such helpful, as a writer. You write differently on piano, I think, than you do on guitar. At least I do. And so that's been helpful I've always written from a young girl as well. So I'd sit down, and what started out as poems would turn into I'd start putting melodies to them, and
Yeah.
they were horrible. They're absolutely horrible. But like I said, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
one thing led to another. So kind of, the singing started, me writing, and then, sitting down and starting to learn an instrument or two. And then that led to me playing in front of the family. And then I started picking up the harmonica, and that led me to, at about 12 or 13 years old, I thought, well, I started really paying attention to harmonica parts on all those great Waylon records, or He Stopped Loving Her Today, or Delta Dawn. And I realized a lot of that was Charlie McCoy or Jelly Roll Johnson, or, there's many, but I started picking those parts out and trying to like take a little riff at a time and learn that riff. And, that's how it started. And then I started realizing how much I liked cross harp, which would be more blues harp, and learning to bend and bend those notes and manipulate those notes. And that led me to the blues. And so my mom would drop me off at the record store, and which in our town, we had Tower Records, of course.
Yeah.
You have Tower Records up in...
No, but I've been
nobody has any record stores hardly.
No, but I've been to Tower
anywhere.
Records a bunch of times in the U.S., yeah.
Yeah. So she would drop me off at our hometown Tower Records, and I would go in and literally spend as long as she would let me for, just going around listening to records. And then I would use whatever money I had from 4-H or from work or whatever, and come out with a stack of new records, and sit down and just tear them apart and listen to, and try to learn, and so the blues was something that I came up singing country music, but I always knew that I always felt like the blues was just another, really, to me, was just a sister or a brother to country.
Certainly is.
And so I never really looked at it as it being a different genre, so to speak, until I got a record deal and learned all about how, everybody likes to put things in a box. And so now I think, don't you think that we're in a place musically where people just like good music? And so I think, I still appreciate good country music, and the quality of the musicianship and tones of voices. And I still look for stylists, people that have unique voices that know who it is, and for great songs. That's the other thing that I kind of really love that I came up when I did was there really was just so many great songs on the radio. You didn't hear a lot of crappy songs back to back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, today is different. It's not country, but it's what country's become. And, I'll have conversations with maybe even people come to our theater maybe here, and they'll be like, well, country music, I don't listen to that garbage anymore. And I said, yeah, but when you were young and listening to the music you were listening to, your parents thought that music was garbage too. And
that's right.
It's just a generational thing. And it just all changes. I'm still waiting for that point, and I'm hoping it makes a left turn and comes back to this really cool traditional thing again. And it will, because I think country is going as far, as it can go, and it needs something different at some point. It's
definitely pushed the envelope. There really are no boundaries in country anymore to consider it country. We've gone hip hop, we've gone pop, we're all over the map as far as what people consider country anymore. And when I say people, I mean different generations. If you're, it really has to do with a lot of what your parents, what you came up on, and generationally where we are. But I think you're so spot on, Darren, because music in general, but particularly if we're focusing on country, it has always had I always kind of looked at it kind of by the decade, but it seems like every 10 or 12 years, it's always had sort of its ebbs and flows of polish and pop where things were really produced and synced. And, at one point, in the 60s, it was orchestral and so forth. And that was considered pop. And it's just, like you said, interesting, the interpretations of what that was at the time.
Yeah.
And now I think we've not only blurred the lines, we've pretty much obliterated them in country. And what I don't want to see happen, and this is my own sort of little plight, but I think I'm not a hater at all. I think there's room for all of us out there, but what I don't want to see happen is for country to completely lose its identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, like you said, it seems like there's this pendulum that swings, and hopefully we'll come back to, we always seem to, there's some artists that come out that sort of move it back over towards that more raw.
You take someone like a Chris Stapleton or something like that, who,
exactly,
it's still that kind of edgy thing, but man, he can just sing it with a guitar, and it's just, you feel like, oh, that's getting back to
absolutely
that rootsy vibe that country is all about. And obviously people really like it, and people of all genres like it. I know people who are not country fans who love Chris Stapleton.
Because if you think about Chris too, what a lot of people don't know is until he really hit, just because he was undeniable, radio didn't necessarily jump on Chris Stapleton and make him a massive star right off the bat. His talent did that, and it happened, with radio kind of reluctantly. Overall, I mean, there were some radio stations that were crazy about him, but what's really interesting about Chris is that Chris was the lead singer of a bluegrass band here in Nashville for many years called the Steel Drivers, and which are still going to this day and are fantastic. And with the type of and tone and depth of his voice, he wasn't your typical bluegrass voice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what drew, us this Nashville crowd to Chris. And also we were aware of his writing abilities and so forth. And in fact, I co-wrote one of the tunes on this album that we put out just recently. Is me and Chris and Trent Willman.
Oh, nice.
And it's a really powerful, kind of haunting song. And he's a deep well, Chris is, and I think he's one of those artists that are just undeniable, and he's not trying to be anything. It's not about costume for him. It's not about the lights and and all that. It's really about a man and a great song and a guitar and a voice. And then let's face it, Morgan and his wife and he make the most stunning team as far as, from an audio standpoint. I could just sit and listen to them together, and they make a great team. So I love watching them work.
Their performance last week on the award show. Did you watch I guess it was the CMAs, right? Last week?
Yes.
Oh, man, it was so good. And it was funny because I watched the show, and lately award shows are just,
strange.
Yeah.
Different.
But man, was that one of the best shows I've ever seen. And what I really liked, that every performer knocked it out of the park. There were so many that I was like, okay, well, Little Big Town just did this crazy Kenny Rogers tribute, and it was sort of like, holy smokes, that was mind-boggling. And then next person would come up. Yeah. So it was impressive, and I liked the format. It was great. It wasn't these. It seemed like everyone was there to really give it their all, right? And it wasn't about the show. It was more about a showcase of their talent. And
I think that's been happening too, more so about with this intimacy that's happening with the virtual stuff, or playing on, an artist, they're like, say, Little Big Town, they're coming to a stage
and they're not playing to an audience. So it's a limited audience kind of situation. So it's much more less about the pizzazz of the show,
Yeah.
and more about, like what you just said, the focus of the performance itself. And because let's face it, when you're, having done it before and having performed on award shows and been a part of many award shows, you're so caught up in the moment and you're nervous, and it's your turn to sing and you're coming out of break, and I don't care who you are, you're caught up in that moment, and you realize you've got that 3 or 4 minutes to knock it out of the park. But doing it virtually, I think, allows these artists to maybe not have there's really not as much pressure. Yeah. And they can just sort of, they're staring into a camera like I am you right now, and I'm just picturing your face right there in the camera, and you kind of have to almost imagine that place is just slam packed, and we miss it. Don't get me wrong. We want to come back to that, but I think there is something kind of special about these virtual type award shows as well.
Yeah, I agree. So let's skip back again.
Yeah.
So you're singing away. You're in high school and playing guitar and harmonica, doing all that stuff. And as you mentioned a little earlier, out of high school, you moved to Nashville. So did you go right after high school? Did you?
I actually started coming back and forth here to Nashville from Northern California when I was about 13.
Nice.
And that seemed to be the age that kind of, it really kicked in with my mom, and we had the short story of this is that I was sitting in the living room one day of our house, and I was just playing guitar and singing in the living room, and we raised quarter horses, and there were, of course, during the, my parents were always showing people horses. We had horses for sale constantly. And so this woman came in to the house that had been out looking at some horses, and I was sitting there playing, and she just kind of stopped, and I kind of stopped, and she said, "Oh, no, please don't stop." And so I kept going. And the short of it is, she went into the kitchen, and they poured the coffee, and they're sitting down talking, business. And her name was Ginger Crowley. She was a very dear friend and a lovely, wonderful lady. And she kind of helped really give me my start, because my parents didn't really have the money for us to fly to Nashville, and we didn't really know, anybody. And so my mom used to sing back in our local scene back in the day. She had a beautiful voice. Yeah. Much more of I got my rasp, I think, from my dad, and my mom had that beautiful kind of almost, she could do a lot of the like Patsy kind of stuff, and also kind of jazz, very smooth, beautiful voice. But she would get nervous. She'd get nervous, and her timing would just completely get shot. So I'd have to kind of hold her down, and like when we would play for the family. Yeah. But my mom and Ginger were talking, and my dad, and Ginger ended up, she said, "Before we get started, I just want to know one thing." And she took her checkbook out, and she said, "What is it going to take to get that little girl right there to Nashville?"
Wow.
I mean, and my mom said, "Well, funny that you're saying that, because we want to get her to Nashville, but we don't know anybody, and we don't know how. So we literally just started connecting the dots with a few old band members that my mom used to play with back in the day.
Yeah.
And then that guy knew somebody in LA, and then that guy knew a couple of people here in Nashville. And we started searching for songs and looking at what I'd been writing and so forth. And I got on my very first airplane and flew from San Francisco to Nashville. And it was this is going to say how long ago it was, which is totally going to date me, but
it was. Right. We're both the same age, so.
Oh, cool. Okay, well,
You look young, so that's awesome. So it was, I think they were still using 747s, not seven. So it was a big plane.
Yeah.
And people were smoking
Yeah.
on the plane.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Smoking section or non-smoking section?
It was the only plane I ever, that was the last time. After that, they banned it. But so it was, I got the very last bit of it, thank goodness. But yeah, they so flew to Nashville and had put a session together with this shyster of a guy, because that's inevitably how it goes. You got to learn. And so
is there as much of that happening now as there used to be?
No. I think it's because of things like this.
Yeah.
We didn't have cell phones. Nobody was, there wasn't podcasts, there wasn't tutorials, there weren't things you wouldn't see me like you're seeing your audience is going to see this, and maybe somebody's kids are going to see this, and so we talk about it, and we talk about, make sure you take care of, don't spend more on, your demos than you need to.
Yeah.
And, and so there are ways to learn now that we didn't have back that when I was starting out. So we kind of had to learn the hard way, but I started coming back and forth at 13. And then I made this 4-song demo with what I did. I will say we paid way too much for it, but I'm still proud to play those 4 songs till this day. And I had a stellar band like, Buddy Emmons on steel and some legendary players that even I out in California was, because I was kind of crazy about reading the back of albums and so forth, and seeing who played on what records and who produced what and who wrote what. So that led to coming back and forth about a couple of, I started coming back and forth to Nashville and just sort of networking with my mom. And then there was a time or two where we had like a neighbor that was coming back. I was about 16. And we had a friend of ours that managed the Doobie Brothers that heard me sing at the fair, our local fair, and said, I want you to go back to Nashville and meet a guy named Barry Beckett. And so I went with our neighbor because my mom couldn't go. And I took a taxi cab by myself to go meet Barry Beckett. And Mom knew that I had a good, pretty good head on my shoulders. And it was just a different time back then too, So yeah, I'm grateful that I came up when I did. And I had to kind of pay my dues in a club and there were you didn't have the content, there was no American Idol or, those types of shows. So I don't know, I kind of came about it the hard way, I guess, or the old fashioned way, but I'm grateful for that. Even the rough times and the rough and tumble times that I went through, I wouldn't trade anything for that education.
Yeah, it's like hours spent. It's like that 10,000 hour thing, right? Where back in the day, you put those hours in, you're playing clubs 7 days a week or whatever it was. There was a lot of practicing, if you want to say it. There were gigs, but there was a lot of practicing going on.
It was we always looked at it as kind of like a paid rehearsal, but when you started you could tell when a shift started to happen, when something caught on with your audience, because, when you're a bar band and you're, at one point, like when we put Trick Pony together, we toured on the road in a van and a trailer for about 4.5 years or so before we got a record deal. And we opened for everybody under the sun that you can possibly imagine back then. And what was interesting was when we kind of knew that we had something that shifted into place, something catchy, something that was getting people's attention, people would flock to the dance floor and would, and they started learning the words to these songs that we had written. And then we would come back into that market and they would request those songs, and we would end up playing, what ended up being our first album, and maybe a couple songs off the second album even.
that Willie's on, as a matter of fact. But we ended up playing those songs for those 4 years as we wrote them, and people, they kind of got road tested.
Yeah.
So there was something really cool about seeing we all had been sidemen for other people, or I'd been, in Nashville, I had been here in town doing demos and so forth for publishers and hit songwriters and so forth. And something shifted with us where the sound kind of clicked into place, and we had something unique and something really special when that happens, and you can see it happen in your audience. And so, yeah.
That's the same thing. That's a bunch of hours spent, right? And all of a sudden,
exactly,
after a while, you just start getting it together. And back in that day, because there was so much playing and so much club work, and you're playing every night, there were a lot of great bands. I mean,
oh yes, oh yeah,
and a lot of great bands who would be like B or C bands now that would just kick butt. And
in some cases, the opening act would end up being even better than the headliner, and also I think another thing that was really cool was we would go and listen to other bands as well, and kind of support each other. And because at the end of the day, the music community, it's changed a little bit today. It's not as much, it's just a little different. Maybe it's just it's a little different of a kind of a feel than it was. But I'm so grateful that I got to Nashville when I did and got to experience. Because really, if somebody was a killer player or an up and comer that you could tell had a lot of potential and so forth, people would talk about that guy or that girl, and they'd go, "Oh, you got to go hear her sing. She'll blow you away. She's going to be something someday." And people would stand on the side of the stage and watch you and support you. They wouldn't just run to their bus. And there was a lot of sense of community and support. And I to this day, I still have that mentality. I still, keep my ears open, and if somebody needs some help or if there's a benefit going on, and when we all kind of know each other for the most part. So that I do love the sense of community in the music business.
So how did Trick Pony come together? What was how did you guys become Trick Pony?
Well, it's as all good things do, very organically. I was in town, like I said, working on demos and so forth, and writing, and really trying to kind of hone my craft and find my way, and doing a solo thing. And I was waiting tables to supplement my income, of course.
Yeah.
And I ran into somebody who said, we're having this party on such and such night at so-and-so's house, and here's the address, you got to come. So I go to this party, and it's basically a chick night, all women. And the woman who owned the house, where we're all, everybody's in the hot tub and we're all slinging mudslides and everybody's having a ball and getting to know each other. The woman who owned the house ended up being Keith Burns's wife at the time.
Yeah. And
we just became kind of fast friends, and she looks at me and she's like, "You sound like you sing." And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, and of course, if you're trying to get anywhere in the world, especially then, you always had music on you at all times. So it's like, bam, there's my demo right there, or you've got some form of some example of your singing." And I gave her that to give to Keith. And at that time, Keith was playing bass for Joe Diffie, and had been for, I guess he played for him for a total of almost 7 years.
Wow.
And he came back into town the next day and listened to that demo and called me, and we met up on 16th Avenue at an office downtown, and he's telling me about this idea, and he's like, you really kind of fit the bill of what I'm looking for, and what I've been thinking about, as far as we all would have, it would be a trio, 2 guys and a girl, and everybody's very unique in their own style, and you'd be singing lead, but we all would take a part. And I said, well, first of all, I guess we need to make sure. I said, who's the third guy you're looking at? And he said, well, he's a guy named Ira Dean. And I perked up and I said, I know Ira. And he said, it was funny because he literally said, he's like, oh my God, you know him? Would you still want to do the gig? Like, like as if that was a bad thing. Because Ira was just a really funny guy. And I said, I know. I said, I love Ira. I've known him from living in the north part of Nashville, and some of the same songwriter rounds and so forth. And I said, no, that's cool. So the 3 of us got together when Ira came in off the road. He was playing bass for Tanya Tucker at the time. Mm-hmm. And, it was just a matter of really sitting down in this basement studio and finding out if our voices blended and what we, how that was going to work. And, it didn't take very long at all to find out that it just worked, that harmony wise, Ira could take that high harmony, and Keith had that low, took the one under me all the time, and things just locked in kind of nicely. And personality wise, we were all kind of A type personality. So we had a lot of Chiefs and no Indians, but really those first, we were together for a total of 10 years. And those first probably 6 years or so, especially with us getting our record deal and starting to see the fruits of our labor, it was like us against the world. And we were really, really tight. I mean, we really loved each other. We were best friends. We had each other's back. Yeah. And then, as does happen with success is a bear sometimes. I think you find out about people's character a lot when things are down. Yeah. And you find out even more when things are actually up, when things are going well, how you handle success or a dose of success. And so I think I've always been a pretty even keel person, even for an artist. Yeah. And I love people, and I don't take myself too seriously. There's not a whole lot of ego going on around here. Yeah. So I never pushed my songs on the band, whereas, other two, that stuff started to happen, and we just started to kind of unravel, and it stopped after a period of time. It stopped being as much fun, and inevitably what sadly started to happen the fastest was I started to kind of hear our music started to suffer because of it. Yeah. Because instead of us being a team and everybody, pulling for each other as a unit, everybody was pulling for themselves. And no, but you're not going to win doing that. That's why Little Big Town is so great. It's because they have always remained very much a quartet and a unit, and they adore each other. And, and it's, that's you've got to maintain that even through your scuffles and disagreements and so forth. And so it ran its course. And at the very end of 2006, we did our last show together, couple shows together, and in December, I guess it was. And I had no idea what was on the other side of that. I didn't know if I was, if we were on Curb Records, and I didn't know if, I hadn't even talked to the label at that point. I didn't, I basically was very respectful to the guys. I gave them notice, and it was not pretty for the next couple months, because I thought that was a classy thing to do, to let them know, and they didn't like that too much. So
you still had gigs to play, and that was,
yeah, under any other circumstances, that might still have been a classy thing to do.
It
But
totally is the classy thing to do.
if I had
Yeah.
it to do over again with that exact scenario, I probably wouldn't have done that. I would have just waited to the end and gone, "Hey,
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year. I won't be there." But yeah, so it got a little ugly, and that was sad. And I always still I always kind of speak of that band with love now, because it was such a great foundation to build on, and such a great education for all of us. And we had a sound that was really, kind of unique, and a feel to our music that was really unique, and got to travel the world together and do some amazing things. And I'll forever be grateful for that band, and
It's hard
what it
for any band to really long haul it. There's not too many that do. Even now, you take a look at Rascal Flatts, right? So,
Sure.
sort of like everyone's kind of, I say, we're doing a farewell tour. I'm thinking, you're doing a what? A farewell tour?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. But yeah, I mean, I think it's hard I think what's great about someone like Little Big Town, there really isn't a lead singer.
No.
And that,
I mean, Karen is probably as close to that as I guess that they get, but it's so their personalities. I mean, they were very much like us in the sense that, when you get to know them, first of all, they're all just four great people. They're fabulous people. They're all interesting, and they all have their own hobbies and interests outside of music. And Kimberly with her cooking, and Karen with her fashion, and but they're all just they're smart, they're kind, and they've kept their feet on the ground. I think that it's so important as you go, and as I've done this many years now, and been able to hit it again with my own solo thing, and then kind of tour off of that, and stay super super busy. And then for a couple of years there, we thought we might put Trick Pony back together again, so there was a couple of sort of missing years there, and that's where I was doing that. It didn't turn out to be a very good idea, but that's what gave me the precipice behind me making this new record. Was I kind of like the Little Big Town thing. Like, I don't want to stop making music because politically I'm not with a certain label, or I don't want to let anything limit me from being able to continue to put music out. I have an audience, and all I want to do is just grow that and continue to write great songs, and try to continue to hone my craft. And when you're around people like Willie, or the Vince Gills of the world, or the Garth Brookses of the world, and you spend time with those folks, or you learn a lot about, and the Rebas and people like that, about, you have to have a little balance in your life. You have to have some things, it's good to have a family to love, and someone to hold on to. And it's good to have outside, something outside that you hopefully are into, whether it be painting or whatever. You like to teach yoga, or I don't know, it doesn't matter, whatever. But, and I think that balance is important, and just your raising. And for me, I think the way you hold it together is you can't have any quit in you. You have to keep going.
Yeah.
And you have to love it, and still have that desire to do it, and still that drive to do it. So yeah, and I just, my attitude about it is so, I'm competitive, but I'm always full of like joy to be there. Like, I'm a pretty happy person.
You can
overall.
Tell that. So the new album, what was your thought behind the latest project? Did you have a sound you were going for? Did you have a thing, or did you just hear a bunch of songs and let's just see what happens?
That's Gus. He's putting a few words in here.
That's right.
Hey, buddy. It's my interview, Bob. He just gave me a look like, I'll decide. This record, the Barfly Sessions, is the idea behind it was, first of all, was just I really want to make I want to paint with a way bigger brush musically than I've ever done before. I don't want to put any boundaries on myself creatively.
Yeah.
I had a hold of a couple of songs that the Stapleton Thing being one of them. About 3 or 4 songs that I felt were kind of gems that were very different from one another. By the way, one was more like kind of a Zeppelin feel, like really wacky rock and kind of slaps you in the face. And then one literally is Buck Owens and Bakersfield, which is where some of my family hails from, and I spent a lot of time and loved that music. And and then to this really dark singer-songwriter thing about loss, and make you cry in your beer kind of type song. And so, I realized these were all so completely different. So that basically became my, okay, so if I'm looking at these songs, how do I figure out a way to build a record and pull my influences and the music that I love and that I've grown up loving, which is a broad spectrum of music, and how do I pull that together? And I just started, I pulled those gems out that I loved, and then I started writing like crazy, and I started thinking about who do I want to produce this, or do I want to produce it myself or co-produce it, because I'd never done that before, even though I'd done so many demos and big A session type demos and so forth. I thought, well, I can do this. So I called my good friend Jim Moose Brown, who is a great writer. He wrote 5 O'Clock Somewhere. That's really the only song I need to ever bring up on Jim Moose Brown, because
done.
Yeah, that song still pays him like it came out last week. Yeah. And so he's played on so many demos. He's been the band leader for Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band for 16, 17 years or more. He's a multi-instrumentalist, but is especially well known for being a phenomenal, soulful Hammond B3 player and piano player.
Yeah.
And I had worked with him for years, and we'd been friends for years. And so, we were writing one day, and I said, right here, actually, in this studio, and I said, I've got this idea for a record, and it's really broad, but I said I want to marry the blues and soul and really traditional, country and honky tonk and singer songwriter stuff, and somehow marry them together and make a big old record. Would you want to co-produce it with me? And he said, yeah, I love that, and so, and he's very broad-minded as well. He's was born in Detroit, Michigan. So he came up with that funk and spent a lot of time in Muscle Shoals, and he's got the blues in his blood, and was raised in Arkansas. So he's, he really appreciates and loves a good country song like I do. And so all the elements are there for him. And then we just sat and kind of cherry picked musicians that were also very broad-minded, not just guys that have like kind of one trick in their bag, guys that can sit down and play, they can twang, and they can also just completely bang and rock and kill it and have just a really big bag of tricks. And that's what we needed. And so we just denned up at his studio for about a week with these guys. And rewrote a lot for it.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 outside songs on the record. One is a duet that I did with Delbert McClinton,
Oh, nice.
called "The Blues Is My Business." And notice I said business. It's important to say business. And the other is a complete 180 from that. It's a song called Whitley's Tombstone, and I did a duet with Randy Houser.
Oh, neat.
And Mickey Raphael came in. I asked him to come in and blow some harp on that tune as well, and he. So that was it. That almost explains the record all in one fell swoop. It's just music that what I wanted to do was be able to put this record on. We're making double vinyl at the top of the year, which I'm excited about, because it's a record that kind of, I think, will sound really, it's kind of made for vinyl. So, but I wanted to be able to put the record on, and every single thing, like, you have no idea what's coming next. There's not the theme is there's no theme. It's just it's exciting to listen to a record that, and somehow yet it has these common threads with these musicians and my voice and the harp and certain tones and sounds that pull it all together. So it's definitely a mix and a blend. Kind of reminds me of like maybe 70s radio.
Oh, yeah.
When I was a kid, and coming up, and you'd listen to certain radio stations that were more, you'd hear Merle Haggard, and then you'd turn around and hear the Eagles, and you turn around and hear Jackson Brown.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and hear Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton, and so it was such a mix of music, and that's sort of the feel behind this record.
That's awesome. Do you find now
it was fun to make, fun to make.
I find now that I'm getting older that yes, a little bit, that it's almost like the pressure is gone. And you just make an album, or you approach it way differently than you used to. And that's a real awesome place to be.
Yeah. I wish now, it's funny, the old wish you knew then what you know now. I guess I'm glad that I did, but it sure would have been nice to take the pressure off myself back in the early days. I feel like, I could have done such a better job if I would have just walked up to that microphone and not been concerned about, am I gonna, with Trick Pony, there was this inner competition that sometimes took place with the three of us.
Yeah.
And sometimes that could turn almost a little ugly. And so there were times where, those guys would tell me, they'd put me down, and I was like a little banny rooster. I would totally, put my dukes up and be going, how dare you? You don't get to talk to me that way. But inevitably, I would change, it would stick with me.
Yeah.
And I would quietly take that to my bunk or to the back of the bus, or I'd take that home with me and think about it. And after a while, it kind of gets to you. And so you start to wonder, am I that good, or am I just mediocre or whatever? And I've certainly had my moments where I've gone through those periods of time where I wish I hadn't. I wish I would have just believed in myself the whole time, and even if I didn't have people that were championing me around me, that I could have just barreled through it. And I did, but now, man, I just enjoy it. I love singing. Stage is my home. Not that I've gotten to be on that many stages this year, but I have been on a few, and it's almost felt like, oh gosh, am I going to be super nervous? Is this going to be weird? And it's like walking into church. It just feels so good, so warm, and just very comfortable. And so I feel more in my element and more comfortable in the studio and playing and with my, writing it out, where I can really enjoy it. I still want to continue to improve. I always want to be a student of this thing, this music thing.
Yeah.
And never stop learning, and expanding. But already I'm kind of thinking I'm so excited about this record, but I can't wait for it to be able to tour around this record.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Next year.
sometime in 2021, early 2021, mid 20. We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We'll know when we know. But
Yeah.
getting to tour around it will almost make it feel brand new again. And then I'm already kind of moving towards and writing towards the next one and seeing where that takes me. So
Awesome.
I'm excited about. I feel like I'm doing my best work kind of now. Like there's going to be this. It feels like a rebirth almost.
This feels good to make music.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just.
I feel pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Because we love what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's neat to have, a space that you can come and record and just call it your own and just relax, and there's no pressure. It doesn't have to be out tomorrow. And
Right.
that stuff is pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
Let me wrap up with a couple of quick questions, because I know I've taken a bunch of your time.
That's okay.
So a couple things I've always liked to ask. Obviously, you've played all over the place. And is there any venue out there or any place you've always wanted to play or sing at that you've never had the chance?
Royal Albert Hall.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm there with you too.
many.
That's on my top one or two for sure.
Yeah. There are many, and I know that you have a venue there, a theater, and I have to say that old theaters that have, sort of a spirit in them, much like the Ryman Auditorium being, here in Nashville, there's a feeling inside that building that is palpable, and so you walk in and you can almost feel the spirits, from. And you can literally stand on the edge of that stage and whisper. And if you're doing it right, even with a packed house, they can still hear you from the balcony. And so there's something about old theaters and those types of venues that I think are wonderful. But I mean, if I just had to name one, that's the one I would rattle off.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
What about entertainers that you've never had the chance to sing with or work with? So is that one person out there that you said, oh, if I ever had a chance to sing with this person, who would it be?
Whew. There are a lot. There are a lot. There have been many that I feel very fortunate to have been able to work with. Right now, if I were to rattle off one name, I would probably have to say, maybe Bonnie Raitt.
Oh, cool.
Would be at the top of my list.
I could see you singing with her.
I've never worked with Emmylou either, and I've always wanted to work with Emmy, so she would be up there with me. Stevie Nicks would be one.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear our voices together. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. There's a lot. There's a lot.
List, yeah. Cool. Well, if people want to find out more about your album, more about you, what's the best way to find you on the socials and all that stuff?
Absolutely. Well, I am very active on, even sometimes when I don't want to be. I think all of us, it's a love-hate thing with social media. It's a wonderful tool to be able to reach out to everybody. And I love getting to see family and friends that are far away. But I also I don't live on it either, but I am pretty interactive on, people can find me at Heidi Newfield at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, just under my name. And I also have done a CD of the Barfly sessions, because I think that there are still a lot of people who are into vinyl and CD. We are printing the vinyl should be done really at the top of spring, so probably like early March we should have the double vinyl done.
Nice.
That and all my merch and more information and kind of about the Barfly sessions, and also they can kind of get a little sample of what they would be what they'd be hearing. is on HeidiNewfield.com, and check out the website. And we try to keep that updated, of course, with up and coming dates. And there's a few of those that are on there for next year already, but there'll be a lot more coming. So check me out on the website, and and YouTube also. We're kind of updating that as well, and I'll be doing a couple of music videos off of the Barfly Sessions Volume 1 that we'll be putting on YouTube as well and sharing on different platforms.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, stick with me for a minute and we'll say a proper goodbye. But for now, we'll wrap up this podcast. It's been awesome to have you on.
Thank you, Dan. It's been awesome to talk to you, and thank you for all your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll catch you soon.
Okay.